I want to start where I said I would begin, and that's with the idea of growth, and specifically from your perspective as president of this institution, managing growth. By my calculus, and I want to say I went into journalism not to have to do math, but I could do this math. Your enrollment seems to have grown by 50 or 60% in the last 10 years. You had just under 20,000 enrolled students in 2001, and you're now over 30,000. This is no small feat to manage the growth of a campus like this.
Well, thank you, Evan, and thanks for being here. We're very pleased at the growth. I think it has to do with the growth of Texas, the demographics of Texas. But on the other hand, there are 38 public institutions in the state and a lot of privates.
Right.
So we're very fortunate to see growth when some campuses did not. And at the same time, we're now competing well with some campuses that years ago, folks would not have thought about in terms of a choice for them. We're now a university of first choice for many more students than it was a decade ago.
And so the population growth in Texas, we know we've gone at least from 2000 and 20 million. We had 20 million citizens in the state of Texas in 2000, 25 million in 2010, now 26 and a half, inching toward 27 million. It is that kind of population growth that has largely fed the enrollment here?
It certainly has. Our growth, when I got here, 70% of our students came from Bexar County. And now 70% of the new class will come from outside Bexar County.
Right.
So
wow.
we're now moving in the direction of recruiting well in Houston, always recruited well in South Texas. But now the new areas for us are Central Texas. So from San Marcos or New Braunfels on to Round Rock and beyond.
We know that the big campuses, the big flagships of the two biggest systems in the state, University of Texas system and Texas A&M, University system being UT Austin and A&M College Station, they're having kind of growth problems themselves in that they're kind of capped out. They don't really have a lot of room. And there are a lot of students who are applying to the main campuses that are simply not getting in. Is it partly that because people can't get into those campuses, they're saying, where else is my best option within that system?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
I think I'm a great believer that you have to have more than just a flagship institution. And I mentioned to you, California, when I was at UCLA, Berkeley seemed to be the great flagship. Nobody was even close.
Right.
But if you now look at the world rankings and you see Berkeley, UCLA right behind them,
right.
The next point, number one, number two best public institutions in America. And not far behind is UC San Diego and Santa Barbara's there, Irvine is there. So they have a lot of schools now that have moved up. And Berkeley remains to be still one of the best universities in the world. But it didn't keep them at all from being and continue to be that ranking that UCLA came up right close. And UC San Diego came up right close.
It's not either or, it's both.
No, you can have more than one or two.
I want to come back to your experience in California and do a little bit of California versus Texas, because as you know, a Texas audience likes nothing more than beating up on California. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. But let me stay within.
It's not being taped, is it?
No. In fact, no one here will tell anybody we taled about it either.
Okay, good. That's fine.
And no tweeting.
Okay.
I wanted to get to specifically why you. So let's assume that UTSA is to some degree the beneficiary of the fact that kids may not be able to get into the flagship. It's UTSA, not UT Arlington. It's UTSA, not UTEP. It's UTSA, not UT Tyler that has experienced this growth. What is the secret sauce? To the degree that you can be objective, what is it about this campus, this institution, that has become such a magnet for so many of these kids?
Well, the secret sauce is hire great faculty, recruit outstanding students, and as you do that, the reputation of the institution goes up.
Right.
When you have a greater, enhanced reputation, then individuals start paying attention to you. And yes, we benefit some by the fact that Texas and both schools have capped. Austin at 50, 51, 52 have capped. So students sometimes are feeling like, maybe I just need to always, and they will, apply for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places, see what happens. And sometimes they get into those schools, but they don't feel good about the size of the entering class in, say, in business and engineering at Texas. Their business program now admits only like the top 4%.
Yep.
So 96% of the students who want to go to Austin with business majors in mind are not going to get in.
Have to go somewhere else.
They got to go somewhere else. And we have a very good business school. You're right here in the middle of it. And people will look at it and say, I've seen the UTSA graduates, again, the reputation, the degree is worth more. And we got to be working at that all the time.
Yeah.
And you understand this in the business you're in.
Yeah.
And then they tell other individuals, I'm at UTSA, things are great. I'm enjoying my classes. I got a job offer.
Yeah.
I was up in New York last week, and I got a note from a student at Goldman Sachs saying, I'm glad to know you're in New York. Come on down to the trading floor. I'm with Goldman Sachs. That's our graduates. They're getting jobs.
So word of mouth gets out.
Word of mouth.
And
so we have to do our part, and certainly our faculty has to do the part in terms of this year, next week, this Saturday, there'll be 60 new faculty members in my house. These are the folks we recruited. I look at the resumes of everybody coming in. I don't interview all these people. I get to talk to a few. It's really impressive. The schools that they're getting their doctorate degrees from top universities, and that's what we want.
And it's 60 new. Are these 60 new replacing 60 who departed, or are you growing the faculty as a result of growing the student population?
25 are replacing retired faculty.
But then the balance are brand new. Where are you finding the money for this? This is an ever-thus conversation in the world of public policy. Never enough money for all the things we want, and especially in higher ed. For years now, we've heard how the state's contribution to the public university budgets is going down and down and down. I think at UT, 15 years ago, it was something like 50% of the budget came from the state. Now it's down to something like 12 or 13%. I'm certain that at institutions like UTSA, it's comparable. Without those dollars, you've got to go find money somewhere else. And I know you've been in the middle of a successful capital campaign, but those dollars are dedicated to specific purposes. How are you paying to stay on top of your faculty needs, 35 new folks? Mm-hmm. How are you paying for the buildings that you no doubt need to accommodate all these kids and all these classes?
Well, the difference for us is that, as an example, Texas is capped.
Yeah.
So they don't get any, there's no growth, there's no new students. We, on the other hand, as we grow,
there's formula funding.
We actually, our portion from the state is 25%.
25%.
25%.
And do you have a sense of how that's changed from the time you first arrived?
Well, when they opened this institution, it was 80%.
80%. And that would have been in?
They opened. Well, officially it's 1974 when the first students arrived in 74.
Right. So basically, over 40 years, what's happened is it's gone from 80% of your budget coming from the state down to 25%.
And we do have to work harder, philanthropy. We got to raise more money.
Right.
But we also have to get more grants. Some of our students come here on research grants,
right,
postdocs.
Right.
We had the discussion today in our meeting this morning. For the first time, we want to be in a position to offer grants to outstanding students. There's a lot of good students who graduate in the top of their class, and all the universities go after them and they offer them. Not uncommon for them to say, if you come here, we got a $4,000 scholarship for you.
Right.
I mean, school costs $8,000, but $4,000 helps a lot. We're not in that game right now. We're not at all able to offer anyone.
You can't play.
No, we can't play because we haven't had the money.
Right.
But today we were having a conversation. Said we're going to have to step up because one of the things we've always tried to move up is in terms of the recruitment of outstanding students.
Yeah.
That faculty want to work with great students. Outstanding students want to work with great faculty. And so you have to have the two.
One also helps you recruit the other.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What about financial aid? So if you haven't really been playing in the financial incentives for exceptional students game, have you been adequately able to keep up on the financial aid side?
On grants and loans, we do $220 million a year. On the merit grants, we're not in it yet, but we're about to step in.
Right. You have enough money for financial aid, or could you use more?
Oh, always use more.
Always use more.
The reason is that 70% of our students need some kind of financial aid.
Some sort of assistance.
And we can't do more than 40, 50%.
Right. The demographics of the student body, if I'm reading the numbers correctly, this appears to be a plurality but not majority Latino student population. Is that correct?
Well, up until last month, the number we were using is 49% Hispanic.
Yeah.
The new class will be 51% Hispanic.
The entering class.
The entering class come September will be 51% Hispanic. And a lot of it is connected to the fact that we are in the town. It's about 60%,
right,
if not 65% Hispanic.
Right.
So that contributes a lot to the population. There's a lot of local students, and that contributes. Same thing happens to El Paso and Pan Am.
Right.
A little bit more of a challenge if you're in the central parts, or if you were in the Dallas area. It's a more challenge in terms of the diversity. But we're very proud of our diversity. It's half and half. And most of our students on many occasions, if you ask them, why did you come to UTSA? Among the best 3 top reasons, one has diversity. I like to be, this is the future of Texas right here.
Right, and as the population changes, President, one imagines that that number will continue to go up because we're going to soon be a majority Latino state. And in fact, coming out of San Antonio, it's kind of an interesting position to be in because if Texas is modeling what this demographic change will look like for the rest of the country, San Antonio is in some respects modeling for the rest of Texas what this change looks like. San Antonio was majority Latino before majority Latino was cool, right?
Absolutely.
So
it's really cool now.
If Texas was the epicenter of the demographic change for the country, then we're kind of here in San Antonio at the epicenter of the epicenter.
You really are.
And this campus is kind of the epicenter of the epicenter of the epicenter. So I'm expecting you to have all the answers for other institutions as they move to a greater percentage of their student enrollment being Latino. What do those institutions of higher education need to know, need to be thinking about in terms of dealing with students, in terms of the curriculum, in terms of faculty? What is it that the other schools would need to know from you all?
Well, let me begin with this. 7 years ago, we were 43% Hispanic. And we decided we need to change and improve our admissions criteria because we had too much open enrollment.
Yep.
And the dangers of open enrollment is you want to have access, absolutely. But you have a lot of students who have not yet really decided whether they want to be in college or not. Mm-hmm. They think they want to be in college, but one day they get up and say, man, maybe I should have gone into the Army. The next day they get up, maybe I should have gone to war. Right. And as a consequence, their grades are going to suffer. Their participation, their enthusiasm for college is not the level it should be.
Well, in fact, President, I bring this up merely as a data point, not as a criticism. I noticed that according to the Higher Education Coordinating Board, your 4-year graduation rate is 13%?
13%, but everyone, here's the 2 things that don't count.
Yeah.
If you start at a community college and come here, then you don't get counted.
Right. Well, there's a problem with the way that they calculate that number, granted.
Absolutely.
But everybody else suffers in the same way.
Well, you can imagine,
right?
Well, to an extent, not really. The kind of students that we get are not the kind of students that are going to graduate in 4 years, and there's a wonderful editorial in the New York Times about that. It's something along the lines of if your income is under $35,000 or something, your chances are 1 in 10 in graduating in 4 years.
And maybe there's been a discussion, in fact, your colleague, President Natalicio at UTEP, will say that the old 4-year graduation rate metric is outmoded.
Yeah.
Because there's a local train and an express train, and you tend to have the kinds of students who travel on the local train.
And we have for a long time. It's changing little by little. So one of the things about our numbers now is they've always reflected the open admissions criteria. We won't see any new numbers because they do the 6-year analysis.
Right.
So we won't see any new data until a year or 2 from now. Now, so when I go to graduation events, and trust me, when I got here in the year 2000, we had something like 2,500 kids graduate across the stage. I could shake everybody's hand. Yeah. This year, we had 5,800 students graduate. I couldn't shake everybody's hand. Right. But you can see we have done our part to contributing to the economy of Texas by graduating twice as many students as we did a decade ago. However, when you sit there at the stage and you see these kids walking by, 7 of 10 did not start at UTSA.
So that's why the number may be...
And so our numbers look like, well, what's going on here? And I said, nothing's going on. Yeah. We're graduating a record number of students, and we're going to continue this path. But what's going on is you guys are counting like the NC2A, which is the one that created it. You know.
Well, the coaches will complain as well about how you measure the graduation rate of their players, because they'll say if we have somebody transfer in, doesn't count.
So here's the interesting thing about it. We have about 1,000 students come here who will transfer out after their first year, because ultimately what they really want to do is go to Austin. And so we have 1,000 students who want to go to Austin. 500 will make the AB grades and transfer to Austin. The other 500 said, well, I didn't get to get to Austin. I might as well go to college back home. So they moved back to where they came from, Midland, Texas, El Paso, wherever. And the 500 that arrive in Austin, Austin cannot count them as part of the graduation. But if we get a kid here who has a straight A, and then he goes over there and he graduates Phi Beta Kappa, we don't get credit, they don't get credit.
Right. The kid is sort of lost to the statistics.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
So maybe one lesson of the way that this particular student enrollment comes together is that the traditional metrics for success maybe need to be relooked at.
And one of the things that they now acknowledge, because we started pushing this,
Right.
why don't you just count degrees? I mean, if that's what you want more kids to graduate from college,
Right.
then why don't you just count the number of kids graduating from college? And again, part of it is 70% of our students are working.
Yeah.
And they could care less about getting out in 4 years.
Right.
What they want is they want to pay for their expenses. Some of these kids come from very traditional families. Right here in San Antonio, I've seen it. Parents' house is worth $30,000. The kid comes home and says, "Hey, Mom, I got into UTSA, and it's only going to cost me $32,000 over the next 4 years."
4 years, right.
Over 4 years. So let's run to the bank and go borrow $32,000. And say, borrow more than a house?
Yeah. So they'd rather get out, take longer to get out, but have less debt.
It's not
No debt if they can.
No debt.
If they can avoid it.
Yeah.
So help us think about this another way. So another lesson to be learned from having a plurality or majority Latino student population in a community like San Antonio would be what? For other institutions that may be wondering what's coming down the path.
Well, I think it has to do with regions. If you are in Houston, you probably get a larger Asian population than we will get. And we actually had a growth in our Asian population from last year to this year from 5.5 to 7.5. And I attribute that to Houston recruitment.
Yeah.
But I think if you're there, you have particular opportunities that you know. So if you are in El Paso or in the Valley, African American, Asian students, very minimal. So they're never going to reach the diversity numbers that we have. If they want to have like a balance, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because most of those kids live outside that region.
How important is the conversation about Tier 1 status? I know that this institution would love to be able to fly the Tier 1 flag. Is that a conversation that more than 100 people at the Capitol fully understand what that means?
And I don't know that. I know this. This town has embraced Tier 1. They basically like winners, and they love the Spurs.
Sure.
They love the Spurs, world champions.
Right.
So they say, if you talk to them about having a Tier 1 institution, they like it for several reasons. One is they like having a local school that their kids and their neighbors can go to. Right. And not say, I don't want to go to UTSA. It's not a very good school.
But say with pride, this is a Tier 1
institution. Say with pride, and we've seen a lot more of that. Secondly, we lose a lot of students if we don't have enough Tier 1 institutions. We lose those students to other states,
right?
Especially Oklahoma. Oklahoma State recruit very well in Dallas. If you don't get into the school you want to, just cross the border.
There's an option. And of course, we know that California does quite well compared to Texas.
And California will lose fewer students in proportion because if you don't like Berkeley or UCLA or San Diego, well, then try Caltech, or try Stanford, or try USC. Yeah. They have at least 9 schools that are in the top rankings.
But I think your analogy to the Spurs is interesting. People in San Antonio do like a winner, but in some ways, again, in the popular imagination, being a Tier 1 school is like the Spurs being the world champions in curling. I don't think a lot of people understand exactly what that means. So why don't you educate this relatively educated audience? What does being a Tier 1 institution as a fact mean?
Well, I think the most important thing is recognizing that the state will benefit, the economy of the state will benefit by graduates and individuals who have advanced degrees. Yeah. Recognizing that 65% of all the jobs in the future, the next 5 and 10 years, will require college degrees.
Right.
After you get to that, then you say, okay, so how are we going to educate these folks, and how are we going to keep them in the state? And how are we going to be assured that when they get their engineering degree, that it's going to be a good degree and they can go out and build roads? Yeah. Well, this is what it's about. We have to have excellence across the board, and excellence is not cheap any more than the Spurs saying, I think I'd rather pay Manu $1 million a year versus, what did he make, 12 million last year, 12 million. So excellence costs money.
And so you think credibly, President, you can make an economic development argument to the skeptics who say, why give more money to higher ed? Higher ed already has enough.
Yeah.
You can actually tie this directly back to workforce development and economic development for this state.
And not only that, but if we lose very bright kids to out-of-state schools, many of those kids will not come back.
They'll never come. In fact, there's research that shows that you end up staying disproportionately close to where you go to college.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so we have to have the best. And why shouldn't Texas think we should have the best higher education program in the world?
Yeah.
By golly, and if it's not the best in America, then we're not doing enough. I can certainly, they talk about having the best highways in the world or that nature, you know.
That didn't exactly
The
go
best
very well in
prisons.
the last legislative session, did it, actually?
The prisons
I
are
might
good.
pick a different example, actually, than that right now. And there is, in theory, a financial opportunity to be realized for this university if Tier 1 status is achieved. All of a sudden, a whole bunch of, the clouds part and the rays shine down on you financially, right?
Well, think about this. If you have good students and you have good faculty that mentor these students, then a rack space down the road that says, we're just going to drift away from the servers and go into cloud computing.
Yeah.
But we can't do it all by ourselves.
Yeah, we need these kids.
We need these kids, and we need to send them back to get the doctorates. We need the faculty. Right. We need research. And so they have partnered with us. Yeah. You're asking about how did you hire these 61 people? 4 of them are funded totally by Rackspace. 4 of them.
Is that right? So,
Absolutely.
So corporate support by way of funding
to their
faculty positions.
To their bottom dollar, to their,
right. So part of what gets you to Tier 1 status is a demonstration of academic excellence.
Yes.
Okay, so what makes academic excellence on this campus? What are the contributing factors? I think a lot of people will say, well, it costs some money to get to be active, but it's not all money. Let's stipulate that money is important. Money is not everything.
No.
What else is it that gets you to be academically excellent and puts you in league to be, whether you're UTSA or any other institution bidding for this status?
Charm, humor.
Right. Well, then you would have been Tier 1 sometime ago.
All right, so here's what we have. Right. This year, we were one of the fortunate of the top 100 universities less than 50 years of age. Only 8 American schools were selected, and we're one of them.
Right.
So how did we get there? People say, well, what kind of things did they look at? One of the biggest drivers was citations. The work that your faculty researchers completed, and whether or not they were cited by anybody else. If you have a high citation number, then your numbers are going to be good for getting into that category. And that's what really helped drive us. So why do you recruit great faculty? Why do you want excellence in the classroom? Not only because you want in the classrooms and they mentor and help you, but also because these individuals will help the reputation of the institution.
So it's self-perpetuating in that way?
Yeah.
Okay. A couple more things before we open it up to the audience for questions. Why is it important that you now have a football program? I know that there was a lot of attention to this, and I know I guess your conference status is about to change. Is that correct? Going into this year, or it has just changed?
It changed 3 weeks ago.
I know this is Texas, and this is basically blasphemy to say this, but so what? In terms of the quality of this institution, the academic excellence, the Tier 1 status, the recruitment, maybe recruitment is actually a reason, by the way, but all the things you want. So what? You have a football program. You survived for so long and did extraordinarily well without one. So what that you have one?
So why?
So what?
So the why is this. The students had been asking for football in the 90s, and they weren't quite organized. So in the last decade, they got organized, and they basically said, 1, do we want football? And 2, are we willing to pay for it? Are we willing to increase our own fees?
Because it does really cost.
It does cost money. The answer was 80%, we want football, and all of them voted to increase their fees so that we would have it. We couldn't have done it without that.
Yeah.
But we have 120 flag football teams registered at UTSA. It's one of the highest in the nation. Our kids like football, and they either like to play it or watch it. And that's why they turned out in a record number, 56,000 first game. The greatest game before that in terms of a first-year program was something like 49,000.
So the direct benefit to you is students are happier.
Yeah.
Right? I assume alumni have an additional reason to give.
Yeah.
Right? More attention on the school.
And I had some boosters and donors who said, you know, made the argument, athletics is a distraction. Why are you doing this? I will tell you, I'm not in favor of football, and I may never give you another dollar if you have a football program. I go, okay, fine, come talk to the students.
Yeah.
They didn't want to come talk to the students and say, you guys are, not smart.
But you can understand, President, that their worry was, this is not UT Austin, which has a self-funding athletic program, in fact, where they return money back to the university. Some people think that, that the UT football program is a drain on the UT Austin budget. In fact, the reverse is true. It actually contributes ultimately to the budget, whatever you think of it. In your case, the expense of this football program, in theory, does redirect resources from other things on the school. So you can understand their concern.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of students look at the college experience, and they want to have a college experience, and you can see the concern. I don't want my child going to Austin because they have Greeks, they have sororities and fraternities, and that's not what college should be about. There are people who say that. And so argument could be made that different kinds of things that we have on a campus don't appeal to everybody. And I'm not going to try to appeal to everybody. It's just the sense is that you got 80% of your students saying, and it's sensible. We want a digital library. We put more digital activity in the library. And they really push for that. And we want some football. I said, fine, as long as it's not a distraction. And I think you can do it if it's not a distraction, as long as you just keep it grounded and focus on the academics. And athletics is like Greek life.
Right.
You can have it,
it's something,
but it doesn't drive the whole campus.
An elective, basically.
It's elective. You want to participate in fraternities? Go ahead. But it doesn't drive the campus.
Look ahead, before we open it up to the audience, look ahead 5 years. What is an unrealized goal for you that you have for this institution that you'd like to see that box checked in 5 years? Something that either right now you've wanted to do and have been unable to do, or something you anticipate 5 years from now is going to have to be a major part of the conversation on this campus.
I think on the academic side, we all would aspire to have 1 or 2 or 3 people on the National Academy.
Yep.
And the top level. I would love to have students who Rhodes Scholars. We had 2 candidates and went all the way to the finals and came close to getting. And one of them who didn't get the Rhodes Scholarship went to Harvard Law. So one of the things we want to see our students succeed after they finish. And so 5 years from now, I want all our students to feel that this was the best decision ever made.